The living room smelled of frosting and balloons. I had worked for weeks to pull together a small birthday party for my son, Caleb. He had just turned 7, and his eyes had lit up when he saw the dinosaur-themed decorations. I wanted him to feel loved, even if the rest of my family never let either of us forget how little we mattered. When my parents walked in, the room shifted. They always carried this air like the party only began once they arrived. My mom gave a tight smile, scanning the room like she was looking for flaws. My dad didn't even bother to greet Caleb. He grunted and shoved a bag onto the gift table. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video. Happy birthday, Mutt, Dad muttered under his breath, loud enough for me to catch it. Caleb froze, unsure if he should smile or not. I crouched next to him and whispered, "Don't mind them, buddy. Just enjoy your day." But then the moment came. The kids gathered around as Caleb sat in front of his gifts. His small hands trembled with excitement. He tore through the wrapping paper, his face glowing when he saw toy cars, coloring sets, and puzzles from friends. Then he reached for the shiny box from my parents. "Ooh, open Nana and Papa's gift," my sister Lindsay chirped, smirking like she already knew something I didn't. Caleb peeled back the paper, opened the box, and froze. Inside was a giant bag of dog food. The room went silent for half a second before bursting into laughter. My dad slapped his knee. My mom tilted her head, fake sweet, and cooed, "Oh, honey, it's just a little joke. You know, for the dog's kid." The phrase echoed, "Dog's kid." Everyone laughed louder. Caleb's lips quivered, his eyes watered, but he tried to hold it in, biting his lip so hard it turned white. My son, on his own birthday, surrounded by people meant to love him, holding a bag of kibble like he was the punchline of their cruel joke. I snapped, "What the hell is wrong with you?" My voice cut through the laughter. Dad leaned back in his chair, smirking. "Relax, Rachel. It's called humor. Maybe if you weren't raising a mutt, you'd know how to laugh." Mom chuckled, adding, "He should be grateful we even brought something. You can't feed a dog cake, can you?" My hands shook, but not from weakness, from rage. I looked at Caleb, who was staring down at his shoes, shoulders hunched, wishing he could disappear. That image seared into me, permanent. I wanted to scream, to throw them out right then, but instead, I forced myself to stand still, watching them mock the only person who mattered to me. Every insult, every snicker from my sister, every joke about us being less, it all stacked inside me like coals in a furnace. Lindsay leaned forward, whispering to Caleb loud enough for the room, "Don't worry, puppy. Maybe next year they'll get you a bone." The kids laughed again, following her lead. Caleb's cheeks turned scarlet. He ran from the room, tears streaming down his face. I followed him into the hallway. He collapsed into my arms, sobbing, "Mom, why do they hate me?" I swallowed hard, holding him tight. "They don't matter, baby, they don't matter." But inside, I knew this was the last time they'd ever humiliate him. When I walked back into that living room, they were still laughing, sipping drinks, proud of their cruelty. Dad raised his cup at me. "Lighten up, it's tradition now. You know, make the mutt tougher. One day he'll thank us." My voice stayed calm, colder than I'd ever heard myself sound. "You think so?" Dad smirked. "Absolutely. We're building character, something you clearly never had." I didn't answer. I just stared at them. In that silence, I felt something inside me shift. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to make sure every one of them regretted this night. And for the first time in years, I saw my parents flinch at my silence. The party limped on, but the joy had died. The kids played with their toys, though their parents kept sneaking awkward glances at me, unsure whether to pretend nothing had happened. My parents, on the other hand, carried themselves like kings, filling plates, telling stories, laughing loudly as though their cruelty was entertainment. Caleb stayed in his room, the faint sound of his crying reaching me every time the hallway door creaked open. I wanted to storm in and throw them out, but I knew how they worked. If I erupted, they'd spin it. They'd call me dramatic, say I ruined my son's birthday with my tantrums. So I sat, quiet, letting their words stack like knives in my chest. Mom glanced over her glass of wine and sneered, "See, Rachel? This is what happens when you let your mistakes raise mistakes. You should have given Caleb to someone who could actually handle him. Maybe then he wouldn't look like a stray." The room chuckled again. Even my aunt, who used to defend me when I was a kid, shook her head and muttered, "Kids need tough love." I looked down at my hands and clenched them under the table. Tough love. That's what they always called it. But tough love never left scars. Tough love didn't make a child cry on his birthday while holding a bag of dog food. Lindsay's voice cut through next, sharp as glass. "At least Caleb matches you. Trash raising trash. It's fitting, Mom, don't you think?" Dad laughed so hard he slapped the table, sending glasses rattling. "Perfect match. Dog's kid. Dog's mother." Something inside me cracked, but I didn't let it show. Instead, I stood and said softly, "I'll check on Caleb." They smirked like they'd won, like I was retreating again, but I wasn't retreating. I was planning. In Caleb's room, he sat curled up on the bed, hugging his knees. His eyes were red, his cheeks blotchy. When I stepped in, he whispered, "Why are they so mean to us? Why can't they just leave us alone?" I knelt beside him, brushing the hair from his forehead. "Because they need someone to step on. It makes them feel taller. But you listen to me, Caleb. What they did tonight won't go unanswered." His little hands grabbed mine, desperate. "Don't fight them, Mom. They'll just hurt you more." I kissed his forehead. "I'm not going to fight them. I'm going to end them." I tucked him in, promising him the rest of the night would be different, and returned to the living room. My parents were still at the table, plates full, talking about Lindsay's upcoming vacation like it was the highlight of the century. Mom noticed me and smirked. "Wipe the tears? Good. Maybe the mutt will learn to laugh at himself one day." Dad added, "It's character building, Rachel. We're teaching him the same way we taught you." And that was it, the final straw. The realization that they weren't ashamed, not even a little. They thought this was their right, mocking me, mocking Caleb, parading our pain as entertainment. I stood silently scanning the room, the decorations I had worked for, the cake I had baked myself, the guests I had invited in hopes that maybe, just maybe, my parents could keep their venom to themselves for one day. And there they were, poisoning everything. But I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I just began cleaning up plates, calm and collected, while they laughed and continued their cruelty. Every move I made was deliberate, stacking cups, clearing dishes, wiping the table. Because inside, I wasn't thinking about the mess on the table. I was thinking about the mess they had made of my life, and how I was about to flip everything they thought they controlled. I caught Lindsay whispering to my cousin, "She's finally breaking. Look at her. Quiet, cleaning, just like a maid." And my mom's laughter carried across the room like poison. That's all she's ever been. Maid, failure, trash. But what none of them realized was that my silence wasn't surrender. It was the storm building, and when it broke, they wouldn't be laughing. The cake sat untouched, the candles still waiting. Caleb had refused to come back out, and honestly, I didn't blame him. The party was ruined, or at least that's what my parents thought. As I quietly cleared the last dish, Dad leaned back in his chair, loosening his belt, smirking. "See? She finally knows her place. That's what happens when you break a dog enough times. It stops barking." My mom raised her glass. "To Lindsay, the only child we are proud of. And to Caleb, may he one day learn to laugh at himself." Everyone lifted their cups. My nails dug into my palm so hard I nearly bled. I didn't say a word. I just carried the bag of dog food, their gift, to the center of the living room. The laughter hushed for the first time all night. "What are you doing, Rachel?" Mom asked, her tone mocking but with a flicker of caution. I tore the bag open, and the smell of kibble spread through the room, their faces twisted in confusion. "This was your joke, wasn't it?" I said, my voice steady, almost calm. "Dog's kid, dog's mother, a dog's gift." I dumped the entire bag onto their table, covering the plates of food they'd been gorging on. "So eat it. Eat what you think of us." Gasps echoed. Lindsay pushed her chair back in disgust. "Are you insane?" But before anyone could react further, I had already pulled out the video I'd been recording on my phone. Every word, every cruel laugh, every dog's kid insult, it was all there. Dad slammed his fist on the table. "You wouldn't dare." I smiled, finally letting them see my teeth. "I already did. Every guest here has seen it, and tomorrow, so will everyone else you care about, your church, your neighbors, your precious co-workers. Everyone will know exactly what you are." The color drained from my mom's face. "You wouldn't." But the murmurs started around the room. The other parents, the neighbors. They were already whispering, already looking at my parents differently. The smug superiority was slipping through their fingers, and they could feel it. Lindsay tried to laugh it off. "They'll just say it's a joke, like always." I locked eyes with her. "Then laugh while people see you mocking a crying 7-year-old. See if they think it's funny." My dad's voice cracked, for the first time sounding less like thunder and more like fear. "Delete it. Right now." I stepped closer, towering over him, though I wasn't taller. "You made my son cry on his birthday. You humiliated him in front of everyone. You called him a dog's kid. You told me I was trash. You don't get to tell me what to do anymore." I pressed play again, the sound filling the room. The cruel laughter, the toxic lines, Lindsay's puppy taunt. Every guest heard it loud and clear. People stood up, gathering their children, glaring at my parents with disgust. One father muttered to me, "Rachel, I'm sorry. We didn't know." He left with his son, slamming the door behind him. Others followed, some shaking their heads, others outright saying, "Monsters." My parents sat frozen, their kingdom collapsing around them, their reputation, their control. It was all slipping, and they couldn't stop it. Finally, I leaned down close enough for only them to hear. "You wanted a joke? Here it is. You thought you could break me forever. But tonight, you broke yourselves." And then, for the first time in my life, I turned my back on them without fear. Caleb peeked out from his room, his eyes still swollen from crying. I smiled at him, soft, real. "Come on, buddy. We don't need them anymore." He walked toward me slowly, glancing at the mess of dog food scattered across the table where his grandparents sat pale and silent. And for the first time, I saw something shift in his little face. He realized they weren't giants anymore. They were small. I took his hand, and together we left the party. Behind us, the sound of their silence was louder than all their laughter had ever been. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video.